Hi everyone! Alright, so today I'm going to be showing you a really awesome virtual reality app that basically allows you to create hand-drawn animation within virtual reality. Now, just that concept alone is completely mind-blowing. So if you're an animator, you're probably going to be falling in love with this program because there's so much that you can do in here. I'm not an animator myself, but I managed to actually get a hang of the program, and I thought I'd just share the interface with you guys as well. So this is going to be a fun one. Hope you guys are ready. Let's get started. Bring this in my scene. Here's it over here. So basically what this program allows you to do is, it's perfect for animators. You basically get to draw out your sketches and you get to see everything playing in real time within this 3D space. So if I click on play, you can see over there, it's just something I drew earlier. It's basically like this ball, I don't know, exploding, or it could be falling into water. But the cool thing about this is all of these sketch lines are three-dimensional, right? So I get to move around my animation and see everything in real time. So it's a perfect tool for animators or storyboard artists that just want to quickly sketch something and get an idea in here. So yeah, that's the basics of this program. Super awesome. So if you're an animator and you've got an Oculus or HTC Vive, go ahead, download this program. I think you're gonna love it. So you can see here with my controllers, the right hand is going to be my main tool hand for accessing all of my brushes and a whole lot of other settings, and then the left controller is for adjusting stuff like the FPS and for actually recording the animation. Okay, so when you start the program, obviously it's going to throw you in here with a blank canvas. So I'm going to start with the right control over here and just try and cover as many tools as possible just to get you up and running with this program. So you see that gear icon over there? Right, first of all, let me start with this. You've got your undo button that you see over there. You've got your color picker and the gear icon. And then obviously this trigger over here, the main trigger at the top, is going to be your sketching tool. So let me just undo that. But when I click the gear icon, it's going to bring up this workspace over here, and this is basically the meat and potatoes of this program. This is where you've got all your sketching tools and a whole lot of other awesome stuff in here. So I'm going to start with the brush settings, and we've got the standard paint tool over here. So again, holding the trigger just to paint, and I'll just undo. And then within the paint tool, we can actually change the shape of the brush we're using. So we can use a standard sphere, or we can change that to something with more harder edges. So if you want to sketch with a cube. But the cool thing about this, if you look down here, there's actually pressure sensitivity that's activated by default. So however hard I press on this main trigger here at the top is going to determine how much pressure is being applied to our sketch. So that's really, really cool. And you can see there it also tapers towards the end. So again, some standard settings, but really, really awesome. And then again, we can choose a point brush, which is, again, if you want something more precise in here to sketch with, you've got that. And then we've got the lightning brush, which is one of my favorites. It just creates like this streak or tail on it. And it's also got some gradient and opacity applied to it, which looks really cool. And then we've got the Coil Brush, which has some nice textures to it. So the bigger my strokes are, the more defined you'll see the pattern on this brush. We've got a standard paintbrush. Again, really cool. It's got some nice texture to it. And we've got a flat brush again, if that's something that you guys want to use for sketching. And a pattern brush, so that can add some nice texture to whatever it is we're drawing. Okay, so again, with the brush settings, I'm going to go back to the sphere. Pressure sensitivity, again, like I said, is turned on by default. You can turn that off so that you're just constantly sketching with a solid sphere, but I like to leave that on. We can choose to always taper whatever we're drawing. So you can see over there, whenever we finish that sketch, there's going to be a taper on the beginning and on the end. And we can choose taper opacity. So that means wherever it's going to taper, there's going to be like that gradient over there, or that opacity to it. And there's also some rotational opacity that we can apply on our sketches. Now, here on the right hand side, this cube that you see that's lying on the side like that is basically our background. So if I wanted a blue background in here, I can select blue and then click on that, and it's going to change the color. But I like to leave it on white. And then if you want to just change the color of your brush, all you have to do You just navigate over here and you can change and choose whatever color you want. Okay, so that's the paint brush settings. Now the line tool is exactly what it says. It's going to be drawing out straight lines for you, and it uses the exact same settings under the paint tool as you see over there. So I'm just going to turn some of these off, but you've got your line tool over here. So again, super useful maybe if you're trying to draw with perspective or draw perspective lines and all of that, then this tool is really going to come in handy. Again, I'm doing this super rough just to show you guys. But again, cool tool for doing perspective or drawing whatever you want that needs straight lines on it. And then we've got the Recolor tool. Okay, so I'm actually going to draw a straight line out here. Now with the Recolor tool, you can actually, it's got its own settings. We can use the replace mode. And when I draw on here with the replace mode, you can see it creates a very nice gradient on there. And again, it's just basically replacing this color with a new color, and I can blend those two together, and there's always going to be that really nice gradient. And then tint mode is going to apply the color but tint it a little bit, so it's going to just darken the color that's been applied on here, so we can blend those colors together really nicely. Opacity mode, I've tried using this. I don't see how this works. It doesn't work that well. Probably have to use some of the opacity brushes previously, or have some tape opacity. I'm not sure, but I haven't gotten this to work properly. And then lighten, of course, we can lighten these colors or darken them, or we can restore and go back to the default color it was on previously. And we can choose to restrict all of these settings just to the layer we're working on. Now we'll get to layers. Layers are located on this other controller over here. Right, so that's that. Then you got your eraser tool, and you just click the trigger in to erase whatever you were drawing. Now again, I want something in the scene, so there's just something I can reference. So just draw another line in here, just so there's something in the scene. Okay, so the nudge tool, super useful. Let's say I drew a line, but I felt like I didn't draw it far enough. With the nudge tool, I can basically extend, continue modifying this line. So it's kind of like a move tool per se. Super useful when you're drawing. So you can continue modifying and editing your line. So awesome tool to use. Okay, so now for the selection layer, I'm actually just going to draw out two shapes over here. So maybe something like that and something like that. So if I go to selection, in order to make a selection, you can see this white sphere over here is determining actually like the radius of how much I'm going to be selecting in my scene. And if I hold down the trigger, you can see now it's selected both. But if you click in the open space, it undoes the selection. So I'm going to make that circle smaller so I can select individually. And if I keep holding on the trigger, I can select more in my scene. So now again, there's some standard options over here, self-explanatory. We can delete, we can cut, we can copy the selection, or we can paste the selection, and that comes in handy. So on the right trigger over here, if I press those three dots, you'll see the layer panel over here. So we can copy and paste different selections to new layer. So I'll be showing you that right now. So let me undo my selection. So let's say I've drawn all of this on one layer, right? Everything you see here, all of this is on one independent layer, right? If I try and move this, you can see that's one layer, okay? And I just made a smiley face. It's added tongue onto there. So that's one layer, right? But let's say there's some elements in the scene that we actually want to separate out from this and bring into a new layer. We go into selection, and let's say I want to separate the mouth and the tongue. So I've got that separated. If I bring up my layer, and a quick way to do this, you just have to click on selection to new layer, and there we go. So now if I actually hide paint layer 3, the mouth is now hidden, and the mouth is on its own layer, and the rest of that is on its own layer as well. So you can do that if you want to copy a selection quickly, or you can do it the long way and just say copy, create a new layer, and say paste. But this is the quicker way to do that. And now if you wanted all of these settings to be constrained within the exact same layer, you would activate this setting over here that says restrict tool to layer. Okay, so I'm going to actually merge this down. So make that one layer, right? And now I want to select everything over here. So hold on the trigger. And we're going to be going on to the next setting, which is the selection stamp. Now, as soon as I click on selection stamp, you can see it basically copied whatever I had selected over there. Now, you use the analog stick, move it left and right to scale it. So this is a quick way to copy and paste selection. So I've copied my selection, and if I click the right trigger, I can make a whole bunch of duplicates. Whoops. A whole bunch of duplicates of what was selected. So this is a really quick way to copy and paste selections within the exact same layer. So again, if I wanted to, I could create a new layer, and then in this layer there's like 3 of these faces, create a new layer, and in this layer there's a bigger face, and that's all organized as you can see over there. So just a quick way to organize layers and copy and paste them. All right, and then this one, the Symmetry Tool, we can choose to actually flip. So I want to make sure I'm on this layer. I can choose to flip the direction of this face, or we can mirror to layer mode. So if I open up the layer over here and with mirror to layer mode selected, it's basically going to create a duplicate of this face on its own layer that's mirrored, as you can see. So again, another super useful tool. So that covers all the stuff for brush settings. A lot of really awesome tools in here. The next one over here, the Anim Brush. Honestly, I still can't figure out what this does. So if there's anyone else using this tool and you've used Anim Brush, I would really appreciate it if you could maybe give some insight into this. Then we've got the onion skin. Now, onion skin is a term used in animation. It's basically when you draw, let me create a new layer. When you draw something out in your scene, so let's say whatever, a stick man, and I create a new layer, you see the onion skin basically allows you to see previous layers. So you know exactly what you're drawing previously so that you know what to draw in the next frame. So think of it like peeling the onion of a skin. You get to see the previous layers of your animation, and that basically helps you during the animation process. So with onion skin, you can actually adjust the opacity of your layers if that's something you're going for. If there's maybe a frame over here that you can't see that well, you can always just adjust the opacity. And over here, standard stuff, we can create a new scene, quick save, load what we've created, save as. You can record a GIF or GIF, so that's awesome. Or we can export a limbic, super awesome feature. When I saw this in this program, I was like, wow. So we can actually export this out of here, take it to other programs like Maya, 3D Studio Max, whatever supports a limbic, and we'll have those animations exported. And we can also share this on Twitter or Sketchfab. So yeah, that's the basics for the brush settings. The brush settings. Okay, so we're going to be moving on and actually getting to the animation and doing something cool in here. So yeah, that'll be in the next part. Right, so I'm just going to undo all of this and get to a fresh scene, and let's continue. All right. Okay, so we've covered basically all of the settings for our right control over here, which is the meat and potatoes. And just a quick tip, guys, when you actually create a new scene, you saw previously my background layer, I had it pure white like this. Not a good idea, because you see on the other controller, I actually can't see any of the settings here because the text is actually white. So I'm going to make sure that's gray. And now if I hover over here, I can actually see the text for these different settings. So very important. Okay, so while we're at that, let's start talking about the other controller. So this is the controller that's going to control all of your frames. When you create a new animation, you're going to determine your frames per second. You're going to be able to copy and paste different frames that you created, and there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do in here. So starting from the left-hand side, this magnification class, if I draw something in my scene here quickly, if I draw something in my scene, and with the magnification, if you hold both of these bottom triggers in, I can choose to enlarge it or decrease the size. Then on the controller itself, we've got a play button, and that's related to actually playing the animation. Left and right is going of between the previous and the next frame. So this icon that you see over here is actually the trigger here at the top that's going to be responsible for creating frames. So just to show you quickly, just create a sphere. And all of this is going to be done on a single layer. I'll get to layers, but it is these three dots. You can see I'm on a single layer over here. But to create a frame, select the circle. I'll draw a circle here, then click the trigger in. You can see it jumps to 2. So I'll draw another circle, click the trigger in, 3, click the trigger in, 4, click the trigger in, 5, click the trigger in, and maybe click the trigger in again. So click the trigger in. So maybe there's this sphere that's exploded over here. So it fell down and that was 10 frames. So in order to play the frame, you just want to click that play button. And as you can see, there's the sphere falling and then it melts and explodes and there's smaller spheres or whatever that broke off from it. So really cool to do. And then again, you can see the onion skin between all of those layers. So you know exactly which frame you're on, whichever is the solid color is the current selected frame. And again, using the analog stick left and right to jump between frames. And then if you want to see everything again, you just click on play. So awesome, really, really cool. And yeah, let's jump into the next settings. Okay, so these other options that you see at the top, we have reset stage transform. Now, before we can do that, we actually have to activate transform stage. So that means we get to move our stage around. We can scale our stage. So that's our entire animation. We can move it around. But if I moved it and I'm not happy with its position, I can reset that and bring it back to its last position. Then we can actually transform a layer. But since we have one layer over here, so I'll create a new layer. And on this layer, let's maybe, I don't know, go to frame 2, frame 3, whatever. But now with this transform layer activated, I can choose to basically transform and move around all of those layers that we drew within that particular layer. So here's the first layer and I can move everything there and it's good to go and play. Whatever. So yeah, that's how you transform those layers, and we can actually transform an individual frame. So if there's a frame we weren't happy with, we can actually go back there. So maybe I wasn't happy with this one, I can select that and maybe bring up this palette and actually delete that. So maybe I wasn't happy with that frame, go back there, delete it. Maybe frame 3 I don't like as well. Whatever. So we can, it gives us flexibility for editing our frames within our animation. Okay. So once you press the 3 dots, it's going to bring up another menu. And in here we have our own settings. So again, frame, a lot of self-explanatory stuff. Some settings there. On the right is our layer panel. And with the frames, you can delete, we can hold frames. I haven't really used that. Yeah, I actually haven't used that, to be honest. But I guess it does exactly what it says. It will hold a particular frame and maybe nothing can happen within the sequence it's been held. So I'll have to still play around with that. Or we can clone frames, copy, paste, or cut. And then we can do the same with layer. We can clone layers. Or we can delete a layer and we can offset frames. Now again, another setting. It seems like it kind of jumps between the frames, as you can see over there, as opposed to just using that. So I just rather use the analog stick to offset and jump between the frames. Then you've got your settings over here, which you can determine your frames per second. So again, 24 frames per second, you're going to have to be drawing a lot of frames. You can see this is like super fast now. So you'll have to draw quite a lot of frames if you're working at that. I tend to leave it on like 12 or 16 sometimes. Kind of gives it like a very old aesthetic animation appeal, at least for me. and then this is still coming soon. So again, here on the panel on the right, we can create a new paint layer. We can actually import media into this program. So I'm guessing stuff like images, reference images that we want to sketch with. We can split those into layers. We can apply lighting to our scene and all of that good stuff, and even a mesh. So that's pretty cool. So I think if you've got OBJs or whatever, we can import that in here as well. So pretty cool stuff. With the layers, we can actually merge these down, and we can move up and move down within our layer tree over here. Filter, paint, I'm not 100%. I haven't played with these settings, and filter mesh. So I guess you can select only meshes that have been imported, and then obviously opacity, controlling the actual opacity of the layers you are working with. Okay, so yeah, that is the basics, guys. So I'm just going to do a quick animation in here with everything that I've gone over. We'll just be drawing like maybe a circle and then having another circle go through the circle. But you guys are free to do whatever you want. But I just want to show you my whole process from start to finish. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so starting from the beginning, bring up the gear icon, go to saving and loading, and just say new. So we start fresh. So I'm going to go to my brush settings, go to paint tool, and I'm going to select the brush paint and probably a blue. And I'm going to make sure I've got this on one layer. And at the same time I'm drawing, I'm going to be creating new layers in this hand. So I'm drawing and animating at the same time. So it's kind of make like a circle going like this. So this will be frame 1. Okay, so click the trigger, create another frame, and I want it to sweep up. And again, remember you are within a 3D space, so you can move around your drawing, create a new frame, create a new frame, and it's just something quick, but again, just showing you the process again from start to finish. So there's, draw another frame, maybe it's starting from here. And now this is starting to come around. Draw another frame. Let's come under here. Stand underneath this. Draw another frame. And make a join back on this. Okay, and maybe just one more frame while it's down here. Okay, so if I click on play, you see it's kind of like this wave that goes round and round and round and round. So what else do I want in the scene? So let's go back into those 3 dots and say new layer. So with the new layer, I want to make sure I'm on frame 1. So we're basically going to be creating a sphere that's going to be flying through the circle. So just something super basic. So we've got the new layer. So in the brush panel, I'm going to select a sphere, and I'm going to draw a sphere in the scene. Like that, draw the sphere, and I'm going to be adding some lightning to the sphere as well. So remember, go to selection and just select this, so I can just move that on its own. So there's a sphere that's coming from here that's going to be flying through the center of the circle. So again, like the tools we used earlier, to speed this up, I'm going to use the selection stamp. This is selected. So there's a selection stamp. Use the left analog trigger to decrease the size. And now jump to frame 2, place that, jump to frame 3, place that, jump to frame 4, place that, jump to frame 5, place that, 6, 7, and 8. So now if I click on play, there's a sphere that's now flying through the circle. Now obviously If you wanted this to be a lot more smoother, you'd have a lot more frames, but I'm just trying to show you something basic. So let's rescale this, and again, it's 3-dimensional, so I get to move around my animation and actually see that sphere coming through from the other side. So that's the basics that I would use for something like this. Now again, I'm going to stop my animation. Let's maybe go to frame 1, and let's use the Recolor Tool. Let's go replace mode. So on frame 1, let's add some blue on here. Go to frame 2. Let's add some blue. Frame 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And there we go. So now if I click on play, there's now gradient on that sphere. And now for the ball, maybe on frame 1, there's some blue over there. Frame 2, some blue. Frame 3. And as it's going further and further, that sphere just fills up with the color. So it starts off dark, and then it eventually becomes full with that blue. So that's how you do animations in this program, guys. Super easy. And again, the fact that this is 3-dimensional is pretty damn cool. And we can export this out of here and take it into another program. So yeah, that's the basics of AnimVR. I know previously I said Anime VR and Animation VR. It's AnimVR. But yeah, that's how you do that. I hope you guys have learned something cool. And if you're an animator, I'm sure you're going to love this program so much. It really is cool. All right, so thank you for watching, and yeah, goodbye.